Hello everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the second colloquium in the series of IPN colloquia. We are organizing these colloquia because the IPN is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And it gives me an enormous pleasure to announce the speaker of today, who is Juliana Freire. Juliana is a professor at the Tandem School of Engineering and a professor of computer science and engineering and data science at New York University. She served as the elected chair of the ACM SIGMOD and as a council member of the Computing Community Consortium. She develops methods and systems that enable a wide range of users to obtain trustworthy insights from data. This spans topics in large-scale data analysis and integration, visualization, machine learning, provenance management, and web information discovery, as well as different applications areas, including urban analytics, predictive modeling, and computational reproducibility. Juliana is a ACM fellow, a AAAS fellow, and a recipient of an NSF career, which is still possible, was still possible at the time, I suppose, and has received numerous other awards like 2 IBM Faculty Awards, a Google Faculty Research Award, and many, many more. It would take too much time to list them all. In today's colloquium, Juliana will talk about the promise and peril, how LLMs are revolutionizing computer science research, which I think is a very interesting topic. So I'm very much looking forward to this talk. But before we actually start the talk, let me put forward one practical announcement. So if you have an urgent small question during the talk, please raise your virtual hand, and you will be allowed to ask your question by voice, so using your microphone. And all the other questions we take in a similar fashion after the talk of today. Now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our today's speakers, Juliana. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be virtually there. As Andy said, I'll be talking about some thoughts that I have on the role that LLMs are playing in computer science research. But let me start, talking about science. And we have already seen that AI has revolutionized science, and it has also enabled impressive advances and at a very fast pace that have changed our society. So I could go on and spend a long time listing some of these great advances. But if we just consider the Nobel Prizes in 2024, we already have strong evidence. So if you look at Nobel Prize in Physics, it was for foundational discoveries and inventions that enabled machine learning with artificial neural networks. And in chemistry was computational protein design and protein structure prediction using artificial intelligence models. So we can see that, this has, when we see computer scientists getting the Nobel Prizes, there's something going on here. But it's not just that AI is advancing science, it's also fundamentally changing how science is actually being done. We've seen science evolve from, the first paradigm where, science was empirical and done via trial and error experiments. We moved to the second paradigm where people tried to use math and models to represent and understand the empirical observations. And when those became too complex, and it was very hard to actually represent, this natural phenomena using mathematical equations. We are lucky that computers were invented, and now we could, in the third paradigm, use simulation and modeling to speed up, these experiments and better understand nature and natural phenomena. The fourth paradigm was actually a term that was coined by Jean Grey, a computer scientist. And it's the era of data-intensive science, where we go beyond, science goes beyond just hypothesis testing to being data-intensive and using data to generate new hypotheses. And now we are seeing, as AI is becoming an integral part of the scientific discovery, people are calling this new mode of doing science as the fifth paradigm. And this is where science is actually seen as a catalyst for scientific progress and also enabling faster and more accurate data analysis, model building, and prediction. And what we're seeing is that yes, AI has become an integral part of day-to-day research, from menial tasks, or maybe not so menial, like synthesizing and summarizing literature at unprecedented scale. A task that it would take researchers a long time to do. We can use these systems to generate computer code and solve scientific problems, as well as automate data analysis and finding patterns in data. And more recently, people have been working on developing AI-powered agents that can not only generate, but also test hypotheses independently. And what we're seeing here is the shift from LLMs or AI as just a tool to becoming real research collaborators. Right? So if we look at computer science, it's not just science that is being revolutionized by AI and LLMs. Computer science itself is being fundamentally reshaped by its own creation. Right? Many problems that we had deemed as intractable can now be solved, and some examples include semantic data integration, understanding of natural language, or automated reasoning. But it goes beyond that. Just like for science, we see an inflection point where how we do computer science is also changing. In computer science, we have our roots in algorithms and mathematical proofs that we could prove that the algorithms that we develop are correct, as well as engineers. So we kind of like started as mathematicians and engineers building systems that solve real problems. Now we are actually dealing with AI systems whose behavior actually remain a mystery to us. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and we're still struggling to understand why. And this is forcing us to, actually become a science and apply the scientific method in our research so that we can empirically observe the behavior of these models. We can try to model and create theories for how they actually work and design experiments to test our hypothesis, right? So we see, science coming at full circle within computer science. So what I would like to do in the remainder of the talk is, first talk about, how the impossible is being made possible, and I'll use an example from my own research. And then I'll discuss a little more about, how we can actually go beyond, our tradition in algorithmic and engineering, and and evolve our research methodology so that we can continue to do vigorous research. So let's, talk about solving the unsolvable. And, my one problem that I've been working on for the past couple of years is data integration. And there's a notable or maybe infamous problem in computer science that has actually long been considered intractable. And what we can see is that after decades of research, and we got all the state-of-the-art techniques, and they still struggle to generalize for different applications and different types of data. Okay. And let me give you a concrete example of a project that I've been working on in collaboration with the NYU School of Medicine around biomedical data integration. A key challenge in biomedical research is that data collection is a very expensive process. And it's important to be able to reuse the data that have been collected. And often researchers need to combine existing research data to carry out, for example, meta-studies so that they can better understand complex mechanisms. So here's an example of a real paper that appeared in Cancer Cell in 2023. And what they did here is a pan-cancer analysis where they obtained data that was collected by 10 different studies for different types of cancer. And they needed to harmonize these different data sets. And just to give you, an example of the complexity involved here, each of these different studies were produced by different groups, and they use varying terminologies, both for the attribute names and values. So for example, for one of the studies, they have this variable called histologic grade FIGO with these 4 different values. In a different study, they call the variable histologic grade, and they have different values for that particular variable. And in order to do the harmonization, what they did in this pan-cancer analysis is that they mapped all the different data sets from the different studies into a standard data model, the Genomic Data Common Model, which is the GDC. And the terminology used by GDC for these variables is actually tumor grade, which is different from the variable names used in the different studies. And it uses yet another set of values to represent that variable. Okay. So what are the challenges here? Besides the heterogeneity, these tables, these different studies have many columns, anywhere between 16 and 179 attributes. And you need to map each of those to the GDC schema that contains approximately 740 attributes. So this is a task that is time-consuming and error-prone, even for experts. So let me give you, again, some additional examples of, why this is hard. And let's look at, a very simple attribute, which is age, which is in one of these data sets. But when you look at GDC, there are multiple attributes that represent age. At age at diagnosis, days to birth, age at index. So which attribute in GDC corresponds to age in my data set, right? So it's really hard to determine that even for an expert. You need to have understanding not only of the data set, but also of the definitions that are in this GDC standard. So you see all these semantic gaps, they require deep knowledge to bridge, and you need to have the user in the loop to actually decide and make an informed decisions on how to map these different data sets. And today, this is done mostly manually. You talk to biomedical researchers, they use Excel spreadsheets. And sometimes when it's larger scale, they sometimes actually write Python scripts or R scripts. And a task like this one of combining these 10 different studies can take anywhere from weeks to months. And in the end, invariably, you have lots of mistakes in the harmonized data. So you may ask me, there's been decades of research in computer science, in particular in data management community on doing data integration. can we use the existing methods to perform this task? And we tried. State-of-the-art methods, traditional methods, for this specific pan cancer study, and the performance is pretty bad. So here we are reporting MRR for different schema matching methods. They perform really badly because most of these techniques rely solely on syntactic similarity measures. And as you've seen in the examples, there's a lot of nuance, and you need to understand the semantics in order to, identify these matches. But even methods that use language models, in this case, pre-trained models, also perform badly. So the question is, how can we, can large language models and language models actually help and help solve this unsolvable data integration problem? And there's a lot of promise. If you look at, for example, these pre-trained language models or PLMs, they are actually very useful because they can capture semantics. Right, so you can create embeddings of the attribute names, of the attribute values, and you can represent them, and you can use these embeddings to identify these column matches, because you could now compare attributes and values by comparing the distance or the similarity between the different embeddings. And this is great because they also capture semantic. The problem with these methods is that they work well, but they need to be fine-tuned for the specific domain. So if I'm applying this to biomedical research, to cancer data, you need to create and manually curate training examples so that you can fine-tune these models so that they can actually use the right notion of distance. And this makes this approach hard to generalize because it's hard to generate these gold data. Large language models, on the other hand, they are already trained with very large corpora, and they embody an amazing volume of knowledge, cross-domain knowledge that enables semantic understanding. And because of that, they can actually perform this task and identify these matches without any fine-tuning. But there's lots of challenges. They have fixed context windows, and if you're dealing with tables or large tables, they may not fit in the LLM prompt. And you invariably need to truncate them, and that may lead to the loss of context that it can be critical for determining these matches. And while some LLMs nowadays are supporting longer prompts, the issue is that the cost gets higher with the longer prompts, as well as the output size. And there are a number of studies that also show that the longer your prompt, the smaller the accuracy. So there's big losses in accuracies for LLMs when you have a very long prompt, because they tend to lose their attention, right? And another problem with these systems is that they're great, but they also take a long time. So you end up having high latency. And if you have a large number of matches to assess using LLMs, can take a very long time. So we are faced with this trade-off. You can use pre-trained or small models that are cheap, but require training data to be effective. And on the other hand, you can use LLMs that they're effective without training, but they can be expensive and slow. So what we did in our group is we started to think, can we actually combine LLMs, small models, pre-trained models, and large language models? And the intuition we had was maybe what we can do is we can use the cheaper pre-trained models as a filtering step to select matching candidates. And then we can apply the more expensive LLMs to select amongst those candidates which ones are the correct ones, or actually rank these selected candidates. And the benefits of this approach is that we can have low cost, both in terms of money and time, And if it works, we can get the high accuracy. Right. So this is, the basic intuition behind this technique that we're calling magneto. You get your source table, your target schema. You can use a pre-trained model to filter the matches, and then we use an LLM to re-rank the candidate matches. And just a preview before I describe exactly how this works. This is the kind of result that we got. So here on the bottom are the techniques that I've shown in that plot before, in blue, in different shades of blue. And here what we're showing is, a scatter plot that looks at the quality of the matches measured as MRR and their runtime. And what we can see is that all the variations of our methods of magneto not only have much higher accuracy, but they also have, smaller runtimes. They run much faster than the other methods. So let's look at how we made this work. So the first idea is, the main drawback of the pre-trained models is that they require training data. So what we did in order to automate this process is that we used LLMs to automatically generate training data, right? So the intuition is that, given a particular column, we can generate different versions of that column using an LLM. And here's a concrete example of a prompt that we use. So we have a table column that has this name, AJCC clinical, and it has this set of values. We ask GPT to generate 3 alternative column names, as well as distinct and technically correct synonyms or variants for the listed values, right? And amazingly enough, GPT is actually able to generate a number of syntactic variations for both the attribute names and attribute values. And what is useful here is that, this idea of doing data augmentation to create training data is not new, but most people have been using just adding noise to the data, adding typos, removing characters, shuffling values. And what the LLMs allow us to do is to move beyond these simple augmentation techniques and add syntactic diversity that can capture different representations for columns and their values. Right? So now, after we generate these training data, we can apply different fine-tuning methods. And in the case of Magneto, we actually combine the LLM-powered data augmentation with, the traditional shuffling, sampling, and perturbation. And we use one, standard method for doing the fine-tuning, with the triplet loss and online triplet space. So with this, we can automatically generate a small model, a pre-trained model that can work well for matching biomedical data. Another challenge that we have when we use language models is that these systems, they were used and they were designed and work well for natural language. But here we're dealing with tabular data with relations. So the question is, how do we bridge this gap? And the first one, and one of the important steps in any solution that uses language models for tabular data is that you need to figure out different ways of transforming the structured data into text that can be processed by the language models. And, and different ways of doing this, different ways of serializing the table can lead to different performance. And in Magneto, we actually experimented with many different ways of representing the columns. The other challenge that we have to deal with is, as I mentioned, there are limits in the prompt size. In particular for PLMs, this limit is quite small. So you are not able to send a whole column or a whole table to one of these models. You need to select a subset of the values, and you have to figure out how to do properly sample and select these values. For Magneto, we use this technique of priority sampling that we proposed for actually estimating inner products. And what is really useful and the reason that this approach is actually effective here is that not only it does weighted sampling, meaning that it gives higher priority for more frequent values, but it also adds coordination in the sense that it maximizes likelihood of selecting the same values in different columns. And that is going to make it more probable that different columns that share the same values are going to match. So one important note is that, again, we're dealing with the systems that we don't understand very well. So it's very important as we are making these design decisions to explore the impact of different approaches or different choices in the final result. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I discuss, how we evaluated Magneto. So as I said, the pre-trained model is used as a cheaper pre-filtering step. So once that selects the candidates, the pairs of attributes that are likely to be matches, we use a large language model to assess these matches. And the reason that this is important is that now we can incorporate this broad knowledge that the LLMs have, but in a cost-effective fashion. Instead of applying that to all possible matches, we do that for just the most likely matches. And here we, use standard techniques that have been shown to work well. In particular, few-shot learning, providing examples and clarifying the task objective. And in order to be able to compare different matches, we use a scoring-oriented instruction where we tell the LLM to actually provide a score for its confidence into how good or on the match that it actually is assessing. All right, so we developed this method, and the question is, how do you go about evaluating it? And this is one big challenge that we face, when doing research that uses these LLMs, is essentially how to evaluate that. And in this case, we used the data sets from the pen cancer study, which are 10 tabular data sets that come in CSV format. And the task for the benchmark is to map each of these data sets into the GDC schema. And the way that we generated the ground truth is that we had 3 different annotators annotate each matching pair, and they used a mix of manual and automated methods for identifying these possible candidate matches. Right. And if you're interested, we have released this benchmark and it's available on Zenodo. Okay, so what do the results look like? You've already had a preview. So these are the baselines, traditional methods and PLM-based methods. And here on the left are the different variations of the Magneto approach. Using different combinations of, pre-training or not pre-trained, using LLMs, fine-tuned or zero-shot. And as you can see, the method provides a much higher accuracy and quality of matches than the other baselines. And since our motivation was biomedical data sets, you can say, oh, this is not surprising. You actually, designed your solution to work well for this kind of data. So what we did next is we evaluated our system using an existing benchmark for data integration for schema matching, the Valentine benchmark that was actually developed at the University of Delft. And we observed a similar behavior where the different variations of magneto are actually comparable or perform better than the other system baselines. So this, suggests that, this approach of combining PLMs and LLMs actually generalizes and can be applied to different applications and different types of data. So what are the takeaways and what we've learned in this project trying to solve this problem? I think that one first lesson is that people nowadays have a tendency to abuse the foundational capabilities of LLMs and do prompt engineering. Oh, here's my schemas, LLM, just go and find what the matches are, right? But what we see, and we have seen that in many of our projects, is that LLMs can be very effective as a component of a bigger solution. You have your architecture, engineer your architecture, and you can place LLMs in different points. In this case, we did that for generating data and for re-ranking the matches, right? And that works well. The other lesson is that cost matters. Maybe LLMs can can solve a particular problem, but are you gonna spend a lot of time, damage the environment if you could actually solve the same problem with a simpler algorithmic solution, right? The other lesson is that, as I mentioned before, we're dealing with these systems that we don't understand very well. So as you're trying to assess the effectiveness of the approaches that you have, you need to apply the scientific method. You need, to perform ablations. You need to understand under which conditions a method is effective or not, and what affects its performance. Right. So, for example, over and over again, one finding that we've had in our projects is that prompt engineering should be a hyperparameter. Sometimes a particular prompt template works in one LLM, but not works in another, and the effectiveness of different prompts also vary with problems. So you need to understand, and you need to design experiments to test your hypothesis and to understand this behavior, right? And second, we need to be very careful with reproducibility. So, and sorry for the typo here. So there's a lot of studies that have shown that the performance of these commercial LLMs vary widely. If you give the same prompts now and 3 months from now, the quality of the results can vary drastically. So when you're doing research, you should always use an open source baseline so that others can build upon your work and replicate what you did, and you can actually get more trust in the results that you reported. And I should say that, I don't have much time to cover all the experiments that we did, but, all the ablations and all the analysis that we've done of the magneto approach are available in our VLDB paper that is going to be presented in London in 2025, in August. All right, so that was schema matching, but in the example that I mentioned to you for the pen cancer analysis, just finding the matches between columns is not sufficient. You need to also map the values that are in those columns, right? They all need to be harmonized. And in order to do this, you need to have the user in the loop to deal with these, semantic gaps. And the way that we can do this is by creating these, to harmonize data sets, we have to assemble these complex pipelines that do both schema matching and value mapping. And at NYU, we have developed these library that provides a set of primitives and support many different methods to perform these basic tasks of matching schemas and matching values. So you could, represent and code these workflows, for example, using a Jupyter notebook. Right, so you can read your file, you can match schema using different matching methods, and you can map your values also using, and you can select many different, from a suite of different primitives. And in the end, you can go and materialize your final table, which was, what the researchers used in the pen cancer analysis. The problem with this approach is that we computer scientists can do this, but this approach is difficult and completely out of reach for domain experts that cannot write Python code. And this is an area where LLMs are also a game changer. And in particular, these agentic systems that enable users to interact with the AI in order to harmonize data. And one reason that these systems are very powerful and usable is that the biomedical researcher could actually communicate with the agent using natural language through a very simple chat-based interface. And because these LLMs have, a very broad knowledge and deep understanding of natural language, they can actually orchestrate and create these harmonization pipelines in response to the user's natural language commands. And it can do that by searching through an action space of data integration primitives. And they can not only identify what primitives to call, but also how to invoke those, right? And in our project, what we did is we annotated these functions that we have in the open source PDI kit so that the LLM can understand what the functions actually do. So the idea is that you have a user interface, which could be a chat-based interface. You have your LLM agent that will search over this action space of data integration primitives and incrementally build the pipeline and run these pipelines. Right? And the idea here is that we can actually empower domain experts to harmonize their own data. So here's an example of a interaction with the Harmonia, which is our harmonization agent. So the users can specify what they want, like loading a particular file, one of the 10 studies, then ask to match the GDC schema, the file to the GDC schema, and so on, right? So the idea is that the user specify the tasks, the LLM is going to decide which functions to call, which parameters to use, will return the results, and this interaction can go until the whole pipeline is actually constructed. So I can show you a short video so that you can have a better idea of how this works. So here's one of the studies that came from the paper by Doe et al. And has some of the data that looks like the examples that I've been showing. And we start here. This is an agent. This is using the Beaker interface. And the first command is to load that file, do.csv. The agent here is thinking. It takes a little while, but it was actually able to generate code that uses pandas to create a data frame. And this is what the data frame looks like. You can inspect the file. Then next, we ask the agent to match this particular data frame to the GDC schema and also fix any results that don't look correct. Right. So this is another, useful feature for these agents is that they can actually assess the results that are returned by the different primitives. Right. So, the agent is thinking, and it's actually calling the underlying functions, the VDI-kit match schema to the GDC. It generates the mappings. Now it says that I need to review, and it finds some errors. So it says that histologic type was mapped to root and seems incorrect. And the agent suggests alternative attributes that could be better matches. And in this case, we know that it should be primary diagnosis. Now it's checking the other outputs. And maybe I can, here's like a combination, a collaboration between the agent, the user, and the primitive in the libraries. You are actually able to generate all the different mappings. So the user can now inspect this, and one of the matches, which was tumor size, was matched to tumor depth, but this doesn't sound right. And we can ask the agent to find alternative mappings. And it does this by calling a functioning VDI kit to find top K matches and returns those, which is tumor largest dimension. And maybe I can speed this up a little bit. And finally, it shows a summary of all the matches as well as what was corrected. So the next step is to find the value mappings, how to map the values in the different columns to the GDC standard. And it's going to go through the same process. It will call the underlying library, and it will check what the library returns. So it sees here that the histologic fiber grade was incorrectly, mapped to low grade. And it keeps doing that. And maybe I can speed it up and just show the final mapping. So for country and country of birth, so they all seem fine. So for histologic grade, the original mapping was incorrect, but then the LLM was able to figure out what were the correct values. There was also another error in the source value was 2, but it was originally mapped by the library as stage 3, so it corrected to stage 2 and so on. So let me again speed it up a little bit. And the final command is, okay, now that we know all the mappings, create a harmonized table, and that's the one that we're going to use in the pan cancer study. This is going to call the underlying function in VDI-kit, which also generates this executable harmonization specification that could potentially be applied to other similar data sets. So it generates that, saves as a new file that you can then inspect with all the correct attribute names as well as attribute values. Okay. Right. So So what are the takeaways here? So one is that it's very easy to use, right? So you don't need to program, just natural language comments, and you can actually perform a very complex task. On the flip side, the fact that natural language is flexible, one challenge is that it can also be ambiguous and may lead to tasks that are underspecified or ambiguously specified. So a lot of work is still needed in terms of helping users properly design and specify these tasks, right? On one hand, and on the other hand, as we develop these libraries that are used as the source of primitives for these agents, we also need to be very careful in how we actually describe the underlying functions in a way that can be understood by the agents. So another advantage or benefit of this agent is that it can automatically identify not just which function should be called, but also how to set the parameters, right? And more impressive for me was that it is actually able also to detect and correct mistakes that are made by the primitives. But we also have to keep in mind that these agents or LLMs in general can also make mistakes. And one thing that we have observed over and over again is that their behavior can be non-deterministic. We send the same prompt multiple times and the results come differently, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of slides. And another big challenge that we have, and this is something that we're still working on, is how do we evaluate these agents, right? Because the goal of the agent is to actually help make the user more effective. So the point is not just to get the right results, is that, that we reduce the time that the user would take to perform that task, maybe with traditional methods, have they become more efficient and more effective, right? And the critical problem here is that, the great thing about LLMs is that they can perform these very difficult tasks automatically and at scale. But, evaluating them and creating those data and looking at their results and seeing whether they're correct or not manually is very, very hard. So this is a big challenge that we're facing right now. Right. And last, while chat-based interfaces are, very easy to use and simple, they can be cumbersome and not very effective when you have complex tasks that have many steps or that manipulate large volumes of data. So one direction that we've been working on is how can you actually combine these agentic interfaces with visual analytics. And here's one visual representation that we've actually designed in order to summarize schema matches. So we have here, the data set that we're trying to map, and these are the attributes in the GDC schema. And the little cells here represent candidate matches. And the darker the cell, the more likely that is a match. The most similar are, so case ID is very similar to case ID here, right? And by doing the summarization and making this interactive where users can select and say, oh, when this matching is correct, so it becomes green. Or you can discard them and reject them interactively. This can streamline this process, not only by giving a broad global overview, but also making it easier and more and enabling the user in a more scalable way to reason about, see, and curate the results from these automated methods. And these two examples that I gave are just two examples we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of work solving real problems using LLMs. And I can definitely see that they are game changers, not just for schema matching or data harmonization, but also for data discovery. So here's some of other projects that we've worked on in use is using LLMs to understand or derive semantics from data sets, doing column type annotation, inferring, semantics of tables, kind of like essentially reverse engineering ontologies or taxonomies from tables, or automatically generating textual descriptions given just tabular data sets, so that it's easier for the LLMs themselves to actually understand what is in these different data sets, and also enabling better findability for data sets that oftentimes come without a description. So if there are questions so far, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I can go to the next part of the talk.
No, so how long is the talk still in terms of slides? Because we are running a little bit out of time.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I can go fast now then. Let me say like another 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay.
Because I would like to have some minutes for questions. A few minutes, yeah.
So my apologies. So I think that so there are a number of unsolvable tasks in CS that are now tractable with LLMs. But we also need to do a reality check and navigate through inherent limitations that LLMs have. So these systems are not foolproof, they make mistakes. And while mistakes don't matter for some applications, for others, they can be catastrophic. Like you don't want data that backs up a cancer study to be wrong, right? So we should avoid using LLMs as a black box, right? And this is one of the lessons that I mentioned. We should architect solutions and that include the proper guardrails so that we can identify and rectify these errors. And part of those, I believe, can be done through the development of new interfaces in interaction modes that can empower users to effectively collaborate with these LLMs and properly specify tasks as well as verify the results. We should also be mindful about transparency because LLMs are inherently opaque. So when we develop these primitives, we should provide interpretable explanations so that we can promote user trust, as well as provide clear usage documentation so that we can expose the rationale of these different primitives behind the decisions for these different primitives. I already talked about this. It's very difficult to evaluate these LLMs as well as create benchmarks. But one big issue that I see and that I haven't seen addressed very, broadly or widely in computer science research are the issues with robustness and reliability. LLMs can produce very different results, and the results are not reproducible. So we need to make sure that not only we design experiments where we can actually measure their robustness and reliability. And this is something that we can learn from science and scientific experiments. We should be able to run these LLMs multiple times and figure out, what percentage of the time they actually make mistakes. When are they correct? So we need to be very careful in terms of how we design our experiments and ablations so that we can understand the model behavior and whether our approaches are actually sound or if the results that we have are a fluke. And I think one of the big challenges that we have is, besides the hype, is ignorance. Nowadays, people just think that they can ask LLMs to do anything for all problems. And even worse, they trust them blindly. So we need to educate and inform our users. And this is something that I think we should be designing into the systems that we are building that are powered by LLMs. So here I just listed a number of best practices, but in the interest of time, I can move to the conclusion. I think it's unquestionable that LLMs are a game changer for science and for computer science. They are helping solve unsolvable problems, but they're not perfect, and we need to make sure that users are in the loop and can collaborate with these systems so that we can actually have good results. Also, LLMs haven't just changed what we can do, but they are forcing us to evolve as a discipline. So computer science is moving from just being algorithmic and engineering to becoming a science. And given this methodological shift, we need to maintain rigor across these fundamentally different research paradigms that make computer science, engineering algorithms, and now empirical experiments. And I see a number of open problems that are brought by these inflection point that we're facing that require solutions that combine methods from different areas for computer science. And I believe that this can actually bring us as a computer science community together and to work more closely. And I just acknowledge my funding and collaborators, and thank you so much. And my apologies for running over.
Thank you so much. You made up for it because you had bedankt on your slide over here. So thank you so much for this wonderful talk. Let me also do this electronically. So we do have time for some questions. And there was already one request for a question in the chat. Italo has a question. Can you?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So thanks for your talk. It was definitely very interesting. And I would like you to comment on another approach to data integration, which is ontology-based data integration, because as far as I see, this approach can solve most of the challenge that you mentioned, although it's definitely time-consuming and not something that you can, let's say, apply to any domain systematically without much revision. So, because it's about basically merging graphs, right? So because of the ontology structure is a graph structure, but it's not only that, but when you need to combine data, you need to understand what the data is about, right? And this is in people's mind. You will not find easily just extracting the information that is in the data set in itself, right? And then to do that, if you can leverage, let's say, a foundational ontology such as BFO, or UFO, or Deutscher, there are many others, you can capture how people understood the data originally and currently, and you can create this picture that is the worldview captured by the database. And then you can identify what is what in each database. And you create this network of concepts that will aggregate everything. So, and this is a lot more stable solution. And I would like you to comment on that.
So I think that there's lots of benefits of using ontologies, but a big challenge is that they're not ontologies for everything, right? But on top of that, that's the first one. So I think that it's important to have methods that work well for a broad range of use cases. But having said that, I think that these LLMs and LLM-based approaches can also help map data to existing ontologies, right? Because I think one of the big challenges, I have my data set, how do I go about mapping to an ontology? So the strategies that, what we've developed, and if you think of Magneto, it does some of ontology matching, right? Because if you think about GDC, it's kind of like an ontology. And we are trying to map the data sets from the papers, from the studies, to that particular ontology.
Hopefully that
Thanks.
answers your question, at least. Are there any further questions from the audience? So, yeah, we have a question from Jeroen. Jeroen, go ahead, please.
I think he's muted.
So he is not able to unmic. So not sure.
I think it works now. I just got it
Yeah.
unlocked,
Yeah.
so that's great.
Yeah.
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering about one of your last comments about we need some kind of explanations for how LLMs are making decisions. And I was just wondering what kind of explanations do you foresee, and how should they be integrated in the systems that you developed? Thank you.
All right, so for the particular example that I gave, one direction we're working on is for the integration primitives, right? So that the primitives can produce an explanation for why they decided that a match is a match, right? So for example, if I'm using a simple, similarity, TF, IDF, or cosine similarity, the primitive could say, look, I found that it's a match because the cosine similarity is low, right? Or if I'm using Magneto, I decided that this is a match because, the embeddings say that the vectors are close to each other. So this can be, application dependent in this case for data integration, right? Ideally, we would like the systems to provide some explanation for how they think, but I think we're a little bit far away. I don't know if people have seen the recent paper by Apple showing that, the LLMs, the agents, they reason, but they get to the right result, but they reason incorrectly. So I think we're a little bit far away from that. So what we can do now is, as we develop these systems, we should engineer and design into the system all these different guardrails that can help with transparency and explainability.
Yeah, definitely a big challenge. Thank you.
Any other questions? Let me ask, in the meantime, a question myself. So I was just wondering, to what extent the use of these LLMs have impact on privacy issues? I mean, you show a lot of, let's say, medical data examples. These LLMs are typically very computationally intensive, so they're running typically in the cloud somewhere. So to what extent does the use of this have a big impact on the privacy issues in your work or in this kind of work?
Yeah, they do. In particular, the closed models, the commercial models, whatever data you send to them, you have no control of what they do, whether they're going to keep your data, your queries, and so on, right? For our project so far, we've been working only with open data. So the privacy is not an issue for this particular project. But in general, for biomedical data, what we've been doing here at NYU is that we have our own LLMs running in-house on our own cloud to ensure that the data does not leak outside, right? But yes, but this is a serious problem, and it's expensive.
Yeah, I think it also allows for opportunities, I would say. I mean, we have another hype, edge AI, I think could be very helpful in that context as well. Yeah. Let me have a look at the audience. Are there any further questions for Juliana? I'm not seeing any hands raised. If not, then I think we can thank you again for this wonderful talk today, and I mean, be willing to provide this talk to, let's say, mostly the Dutch community of computer science. So thank you for that. Maybe as a general announcement to everyone who is still left. So during the 2 months, July and August, we will not have any colloquia organized during the summer break. So we will continue in September. And the upcoming talk is already listed on the IPN website. So you can have a look who will be featuring in September. So again, I would like to thank everyone for being present, and again, Juliana, thank you for this wonderful talk. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.
Absolutely, our pleasure. So that was really nice, very interesting, and I hope to see you all back in September when we continue this series of IPN colloquia. Do I see a hand raised still? I saw some hand raised, or was it just me? No, probably it was just me. Okay, so again, thank you, everyone. I think we can conclude this session today. So thank you, and hopefully see you back for the next colloquium talk. Thank you, Juliana.
Happy summer.
Happy summer. Thank you. Bye-bye.